Can you remember a time with your kids where you were truly disappointed in them?
I was disappointed for him. I wasn't disappointed in him.
One of my sons really dealt with negativity.
Biggest disappointment I ever had with the GM tell me, we don't think you can hit right-handed hitting anymore.
We don't want to try to teach our kids not to be disappointed. It's really about how they respond.
How many kids are disappointed more by their team's result or by their individual results?
I think selfish nature will always come back to your own performance first.
Try to teach our kids not to be so disappointed when you lose 1 out of 25 games.
If it ruins your day, we might have an issue. Before we get to the podcast, if you have middle school or high school kids that play sports and you don't want to fundraise like me, we got you covered. My buddy Chris Carneal owns Booster. Chris?
We help schools and sports teams raise funds in a super fun and engaging way. In fact, the last 22 years, we've raised $750 million, and we can't wait to help you. Choose Booster.com.
Welcome back to Pure Athlete. We have a great episode for you this week. Britt, Brad, how we doing, guys?
Doing good. We're kind of in the slow days, what do they call it, the dead period in professional and college sports.
Yeah, for sure. I'm ready for baseball to get cranked up. We're doing a little spring training now.
Yep. We got spring training in full swing, and you know, if you know you're on a team, man, spring training is the best time ever.
Yeah,
you can relax. If you go 0 for 3, who cares? You know. But I will tell you this: when you're trying to make a team, it is very stressful.
Really.
And every at bat, every inning a pitcher gets. Because you just and I always tell people this, especially when you've been around a while, you know, it's tough because you're not only pitching for the team you're at, but you're pitching for other teams. Because usually at the end of spring training, there's 1 or 2 sometimes holes in a team that teams will go trade or try to pluck guys with. But like I said, if you're established everyday guy, you know, you might strike out in the first and be like, well, who cares?
Yeah.
Do most guys know kind of their place in the pecking order?
Yeah. I used to say Bobby Cox gave, so, you know, it's 26 on a roster now. When I played, it was 25. And Bobby used to always say at the beginning of camp, hey, there's 22 to 23 spots I know right now are locked.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 2-3 spots that you're fighting for. Half of you in this room know you have a chance. Half this in this room know you're going to AA or AAA no matter what. And it was very honest, and I actually always appreciated that because he didn't give people a sense of false hope.
Yeah, it's got to be, you know, I always wonder if you're a pitcher and on the bubble and your first outing or 2 are pretty rough. And they always say, well, it's spring, you know, we know it takes time. They got to be dying on the inside.
No, it is. And it's tough because part of spring training, right, is for veteran guys preparing for the season. So the first 2 weeks of spring training, you might see a young kid hit 450 and you're like, man, he's hot. But if you go back and look, it's first pitch fastball right down the middle. And I'll never forget one of his best stories, and then we'll get going. But remember Jared Saltalamacchia backed up Brian McCann?
Yeah.
So in 2000, it was 6 or 7, we were down in Port St. Lucie playing the Mets. And Billy Wagner was pitching. And it was his first outing. Billy Wagner, who just obviously got in the Hall of Fame, and he's going to join us this summer. But he just got to spring training. It's like his first or second outing. He was throwing literally 91, 92.
It's not Billy Wagner.
No. And Saltalamacchia hit a home run. And, you know, he's a switch hitter, so he's hitting from the right side, hit a home run. And I remember he comes back in the dugout and sits down and goes, man, this guy, what's all the fuss about? I shut my mouth. I didn't say anything. So David Ross was backup catcher. David Ross went on the IL, DL at that time. And so Saltalamacchia gets called up. So we go to Shea Stadium. It's a Friday night, 40,000 people there. And we're down 2 runs in the top of the 9th. Billy Wagner comes in. Place is going nuts, you know, and it's just incredible. And Ryan Langerhans was coming up to bat. And so with 2 outs, Bobby pinch hit Salty for Ryan Langerhans. Runner on first or second. So chance to tie the ball game with a homer. 101. 99 in, back foot slider, strike 3. Saltalamacchia puts his head down, comes walking back to the dugout, sits down, and I'd been saving this, and it just kind of popped in my moment. And it probably was not the right time, but I couldn't help myself. And I looked and go, he's a little different here in May up in Shea Stadium, isn't he? And he was like, screw you, man. You know, he was so mad. But I just remember always thinking, because I remember my first spring training as a rookie, I had a homer off Javier Vasquez, remember, who actually pitched for the Braves and was a teammate of mine. And I go back now, and it was 91, and he was like 96, 97 with the nasty slide. But, you know, you get that feeling, you're like, man, I've made it. You know? And I'm like, these guys could care less what we do off them. So spring training's always funny. Bobby Cox used to say the first 2 weeks is for the young guys. The next 2 weeks are for the guys trying to make the team. And then the last 2 weeks is to get all my veteran guys ready for the season. I always kind of like that, how he divvied it.
That's cool. That's cool. I want to ask you before we get started, what are they calling it? The ABS?
The new challenge system.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about all that?
I love what Terry Francona's doing. I don't know if you saw, he told his veteran guys that are going to be on the big league club, you cannot challenge because you can't do it during the season.
Yeah.
The thing I don't like, I told you this, is you get 2 challenges for the whole game, and only the pitcher, the catcher, and the hitter can do this. And I think we saw it the other day. It was like the second pitch of a game already, and someone's challenging.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, honestly, it brings out the selfishness of the players maybe to a certain point. I saw the Rays game last week where Kevin Cash started horse laughing because his catcher challenged a play and it missed by that much. I don't like that.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to go to a full automated strike zone, okay, let's do it. But to do that twice a game, I just think it's kind of pointless.
Yeah, makes sense.
So do you think it's going to be adopted eventually?
I don't, because
Really?
I think the players are like, what do we? I think the players are going to say either do full automated
All the
strike
way.
zone or don't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because then again, like I said, you're going to have some of these guys challenge in the first, second inning. So when it actually, to me, matters, probably in the 7th, 8th, and 9th, teams are going to be out of challenges. Because it's not like if you're right, you keep the challenge.
But you think
right?
that, like,
I think it's just you get 2.
Wouldn't you think strategically though, the manager would say, like, we're not challenging unless it's like a, it's like a 3-2 count.
You know how many players listen to their managers
Well,
in the
yeah,
big
I
leagues?
guess so.
Yeah, see, if I was a manager, you give like only 2 players the ability to challenge.
Like, I mean, if it's bottom of the 7th, bases loaded, it's a 3-2 count, and you think you got hosed on a
Dude,
pitch. I mean, like,
You've watched Ronald Acuna play as long as I have.
Yeah.
That first pitch is that far out to
He's
start
gonna-
the game.
that's
He's going
true.
like,
He just used
and what is Snit going to tell him? Man, I'm benching you. You know, like,
yeah.
Hey,
but
do you think that balls and strikes? Do you think it's worse today? Do you think it's worse?
umpires
today than it used
follow
to be?
this today, and the whole reason that the automated strike zone system is coming is because of gambling.
Mm,
There's too much. There's
Yeah,
too
that's
many
interesting.
umpires that bigger zone, smaller zone.
yeah,
Some of the younger guys, even if it's a 10-1 game, stay in that zone. Other umpires will give more. And so I just think because of gambling purposes, I
Yeah,
think they're
that's-
coming to an automated strike zone.
hadn't thought
They
about
want
that.
they want
They
more
want
certainty.
consistency.
Sure.
They want
Gee,
certainty in
that's
what they're doing.
crazy. That's
Sure.
crazy.
I told you, Doug Eddings, man, one of my favorite umpires. Sunday afternoon, man. I walk up to the plate. Frenchie, swing it. We're getting out of here in 2.5 today. Yes, sir. You can't do that anymore because of this, how they do it. But
That's interesting.
Swing it.
so, it's funny. We talk about the lull in kind of the major sports, right? But I love today's topic, which it's called dealing with disappointment, because for soccer,
It's about to ramp
volleyball, softball, baseball, lacrosse, we're getting in travel season big time. And it is like the start right now, March, April, May, June, where for 4 months, parents, families, kids are going to be traveling all over the place to play and dealing with a lot of disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
Packing up the Tahoe, getting ready to drive up the highway.
Packing up the Tahoe with a lot of smiles, packing up the Tahoe to come home with
Not so
a
much.
lot of
A lot
feeling.
of quiet.
Yeah, it could be quiet, could be,
Yeah.
excitement.
Yeah.
But I think this is cool because I think for kids and parents, how do you deal with disappointment? So what have you kind of chalked up for us?
Dude, I love this topic because Brad and I on the side have talked about, for 2.5 years, we've talked about we want to do this topic at some point because we both dealt with some major disappointment. Our kids being disappointed, but also us being disappointed as parents, and how you manage and navigate all of that effectively as we talk about leveraging youth sports, to help our kids learn life lessons and so on and so forth. So I thought what we do today is start off and just talk about disappointment that our kids have And at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about disappointment that parents may face and how to deal with that. So let's just kick off and talk about, what are all the things that cause disappointment for our kids in sports? There's a bunch.
For our kids, you're saying?
Yeah, for kids.
Well, look, not winning, not performing, not getting playing time.
Yeah.
I mean,
Not playing the position that they wanted to play, that they thought they should be playing.
getting yelled at by a coach, getting yelled at by your own parents.
Getting cut, it'll get any position.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I would say
a bad call.
Yeah.
I would say you see at a certain age, certain kids get disappointed in their teammates because their teammates don't take it as serious as they take it,
Yeah.
or their teammates take it too seriously sometimes, and they're screaming at them.
Yeah, I had a deal where one of my sons in a basketball game in like 6th grade left the game, and we got in the car and he was terribly disappointed, and they got beat by this group from across town and that were incredibly physical, and a lot of the other players on our team just kind of gave up.
Yeah.
And it just, the disappointment was real.
And I think that's good.
Yeah.
It shows a care. And so that's what I think we talk about. Is it okay to be disappointed? Absolutely. I think also you use that disappointment as a lesson, as a learning tool to fuel you to fix whatever it is, so you don't try to feel like that again. Even though you will, you try to lessen that disappointment.
Yep.
How much? This is just a hypothetical question though, but based on you guys as parents and as coaches, how many kids are disappointed more by their team's result or by their individual results, like how they performed? Do you think they're more concerned with and again they're 9 and 10 years old?
I think selfish nature will always come back to your own performance first. I mean, look, we love the team aspect. We love rooting our teammates, but I think every kid, every parent's going to look at their own kid first. And who can blame them, right? Like, I mean, if that's what it becomes all about that, then we have an issue. But I think we talked about this. If your kid's struggling, man, and all of a sudden they finally have a good game, they score 2 goals in soccer when they've been brutal, and your team loses, it's okay to feel some excitement for your kid and for the thing. Now, again, be cognizant of what happened in the game. Be cognizant of whose other kids or who you're around with parents.
Well, and this is a teaching moment for your kid.
Yeah.
To teach them, after the game on the side, man, it's okay to be excited that you hit a home run today and your team got trounced. But you don't want to show excitement.
Remember, I told a happy hit guy.
Yeah.
When your team loses and you're 4 for 4.
Yeah.
Hey guys,
right.
Like have some
read the room.
Have some awareness. Exactly.
Well, does it come into play? We could go really deep on this, but does it matter because there's so many more games now? Like we talked, do travel sports because they play so many tournaments? Does the winning or losing a game, or even little league or club soccer or volleyball, like they play so many? Do you think the kids care as much about winning? I mean, obviously, if it's a big tournament, obviously if it's something that's on the line, but your typical weekend tournament, do you think, and if they lose that game, do you think it's something that really disappoints them, or is it just, hey, we got another one next weekend?
That's a great question. I think because of how many games and how many tournaments, I do think it's lost its luster probably. From just me coaching travel softball, you're playing 5 games in a day. And I'd be lying if I didn't say there's a few pool play games early where if I really wanted to win, I probably could win if I did a certain thing. But I'm also thinking about bracket play in the afternoon and having availability.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to say you throw the game, but you might not go after that game as hard, which I think when we were young, most of those games, every game meant something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what do we teach our kids about all that? We talk a lot about teaching our kids to embrace failure in sports because it's just part of sports and to deal with it. So, do we want to try to teach our kids not to be so disappointed when you lose 1 out of 25 games? We had Dansby Swanson on, and he talked about how devastated he was with every loss, as a kid.
Yeah.
So
Then you get to the big leagues and
Yeah,
join
you-
the Braves in 16. It's like, oh,
Right.
we lost again, lost again.
but do we, if you have a kid that's like that, I think there's a question that rolls around in your head is, do you want to correct that and say, dude, it's okay to lose? Or do you want to lean into that and say, embrace that, terrible hatred of losing?
Yeah, I think, like I tell our kids, we want to win every game we step on the field. I mean, you should always try to win. But with that being said, if you're disappointed for a little bit, totally get it. But you have to have the ability and the tools to flip that disappointment real quick and realize I got another game. I got another tournament next weekend. So how do I fuel that? How do I?
That's the secret.
If it ruins your day,
Yeah.
where you go home and you can't function, you can't talk to friends, then you know what? It's like we might have an issue.
I mean, I think it depends on the sport, because I think if you're playing a team sport, I think that the goal is a little different than if you're playing an individual sport, because, if you're one of 11 guys on the field and you give 100%, sometimes it's just not going to happen. You could be a offensive tackle and have a great game, but there's 10 other guys that have to do their job, and just sometimes you're not going to win. And so, like, I always tell my kids, or I tell our kids at our schools, like, you can control what you can control. Yeah, you want to win every game. Now, if you're playing tennis, if you're playing golf, like, it's on you. It's really it's you and your. But if you're on a team that you may be more talented. The other team may be more talented. You had a great game, and not just a great game stat wise, but you had a great game effort wise, and you were a great teammate. I think that as a parent, you can tell that kid, like, look, man, I know we want you to try to win every game, but more importantly, it's given 100%. There's other things that you're gonna, if you can do everything you can, that's really the win right there. Now, again, it's still, you still want to try to win. That's why you play. There's a scoreboard. But
For a reason. Yeah.
I would think the individual sports would be a different kind of perspective than a team sport, because you control it more.
Yeah, 100%. And as you said, it's all on you. And in most of these individual sports, you're losing. We talk about baseball being a game of failure. Well, tennis or golf, there's only one person in a tournament who ultimately wins. You're losing every week. And so, yeah, learning how to deal with losing. And Jeff, I think you said it well, short-term disappointment versus long-term disappointment that affects your kid for, an inordinate amount of time, I think is what you really want to look at.
Here's another dynamic to kind of throw out there, and you're probably experiencing it with your softball team, is like when it's rec ball or all stars, you can kind of have that kumbaya kind of feel. Again, but when you get to higher level travel and club, there's a top, I would say the top third or top 40% on a travel that feel pretty good. They can focus on just trying to win.
Yeah.
The bottom third or the middle to the bottom third, those kids are fighting to stay on that team. Like, there's always, especially the bottom third, they feel that pressure individually to stay on that team. Everybody's looking at them as probably the weaker kids, and they probably are going to each game thinking about, I got to produce something.
Yeah.
And that to them may be more important than their team winning, because they may, it's great that your team won, but if you don't produce, you're probably not going to be on that team. You're probably not going to make the team the next year.
Yeah, and I think he finds out a lot about kids, right? How to handle pressure. We talked in episodes about that, how to control yourself. When is it anxiety? When is it pressure? All that stuff. So you got to have a pulse on your kid. But I do think the one thing I'll go back, because the amount of games kids play today, I do think the disappointment of just losing a game, I don't think it means what it used to. And I don't think it's a bad thing. But I think, as the stakes get higher, as you get into bracket play and stuff, I think kids have a better feel of that.
Now, I tell you, when it comes to high school sports, it still means something.
Absolutely.
Every single game it should, and I've seen it even regular season games, but like region games, and then obviously when you get in the state playoff, we're in the state basketball playoffs right now, and it's one and done. And so that's what I love about high school sports. Still, is that it's still about trying to win for your school.
Yeah, which is cool. Mark DeRosa, one of our guests we've had on here, his son's at North Gwinnett as a 9th grader. And he told Mark he played his first game for ninth grade, and he says the most fun he had playing baseball.
Yeah.
And he's playing some big travel tournaments, but I think it goes to show you putting on a school uniform
With your buddies.
means a lot.
Yeah.
So Jeff, I'm curious, when we talk about disappointment, I mean, it's reality, and disappointment happens when you're 6 and it happens when you're 30 playing sports. So talk to us a little bit about, maybe it's youth, maybe it's in Major League Baseball. You dealt with disappointment.
I would say at the youth level, I remember, I played on a top travel team, 10, 11, 12 years old. And then I've told you all the story. My dad yanked me off the team. I played with my buddies the next year. I think the disappointment for me was the next year was we went to a lot of these tournaments, and I was used to going 4-0, 5-0, and we started getting waxed.
Mm-hmm.
And the disappointment of losing, I felt, and this is where my dad stepped in and did a great job. Both my mom and my dad, actually, I got to give her credit too, is, we were going to these tournaments, and my mom and dad would be like, look, the kids are playing hard. You're just not as talented as the other team. We chose to do this so you could play with your buddies, and we could be close to home, not driving all over the place. And, they're just not as talented as kids from all over the place. And so for me, it was kind of my parents painted this picture that was like my disappointment started to go down because I'm like, you know what? We are trying as a team. We're just not as talented as the other team. Now it switched because we all got to high school and we had played together and we became really good and everybody had a blast. But I think my parents walked through that with me, which was great, helped me see it. And then at the big league level, I think the biggest disappointment I ever had was I remember when I had the first guy, a GM, tell me, hey, your bat has slowed down as you got older, and we don't think you can hit right-handed hitting anymore.
Mm.
And that was to hear that.
Gut punch.
It's a gut punch,
Yeah.
and lot of feelings. I was mad. Okay, I'll show you this, and it just did me no good. And I remember thinking, man, I gotta change how I'm looking at this. And, every opportunity I get, whether it's a left-handed pitcher or a righty that maybe didn't throw as hard, I need to produce, do the best I can. And if I get that opportunity again, be ready for it. But I also stepped back and I started looking a little bit, and I'm like, they're probably not wrong.
Yeah.
I have lost a little bit of bat speed. And so, again, it's okay to be disappointed for a little bit. But I think if you start to let it affect your performance as you keep going, then you got to really get to the root of it and what's going on.
Did you call your dad?
Oh yeah. And I mean, he, if I remember, his thing was, well, you've sucked the last 2 weeks against good righties. And I'm like, thanks, Dad. But I mean, that's where, and I say this, y'all have met my mom and dad, and like they speak truth. Like he's not going to sugarcoat it. Now it didn't mean, he told me, if anything, it means you got to get back to work. You got to get in the weight room. You got to try to do everything you can to fight father time.
Yeah.
But if I'm the coach and I'm sitting here looking at it, yeah, you're not pulling your weight right now.
Yeah. I love, though, as an adult that you called your dad
No, absolutely.
because you knew he's going to speak truth.
Yep.
Me and my dad talked after every game.
I mean, that's really cool.
Every game. I'd get in the car, I'd call him. And, most of the time he'd let me steer the conversation, which 98% of the time went into the game or something that happened. But it was always like, that's why Katie always said did the best job. We drove 2 cars to the field. A lot of guys, the wives will wait and drive home. She knew I needed that time to decompress.
Mm-hmm.
Get in the car, call my old man and everything. Then when I got home, I was good to go. And every once in a while, my mom would answer, and she would be, you just look tired out there or something. I'm like, Mom, put Dad on the phone.
The car ride home, it went all the way to
right.
pro ball.
It went
right.
until the last game I ever played.
Wow.
I love it. That's
really
cool.
cool.
Well, you said something in there that I think, throws us into the next area in this conversation, and that's that disappointment's real. It's going to happen for everybody over and over and over again. And we don't want to try to teach our kids not to be disappointed. It's really about how they respond to disappointment. So, and we see positive responses to disappointment and we see negative responses to disappointment. So as we're talking to parents out there, let's talk for a minute just quickly about the ways kids can negatively respond to disappointment.
Be a bad teammate.
Yep.
Sit there and sulk. Not cheer, like I said, not cheering your teammates on. Make it all about you, how you need to be successful. lose sight of the team, all those things that, quite frankly, you become a bad teammate.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, again, they're kids, but losing perspective, like wanting to quit, looking at like this is a big thing as opposed to just a small microcosm, of their baseball journey or their volleyball journey or whatever. But I mean, I guess the main thing would be like, oh, it's, I stink. I want to quit.
Yeah.
Sport's not for me. I want to try something else, but I think that's where as parents, you kind of try to give them that perspective.
Yeah, I think like we see kids who make a lot of excuses, and that typically comes from parents who make a lot of excuses for their kid.
Yeah.
And everybody hates that. Oh man,
Yeah,
I didn't
no.
play good today, but I haven't played in a week,
Oh, yeah.
or I haven't this, or the wind
I had a
was
splinter in my
bad.
hand, and I couldn't swing as hard
really,
as I wanted.
really
The
hard.
most impressive thing to me as a dad or as a AD or just somebody watching is those players that that you didn't know that they were hurt when they played.
Yeah.
And they're not, because I would be so like, especially when you have pressure on you to come into a game like, hey guys, I'm probably about 70%,
Yeah.
but they're in, and they don't tell anybody,
Yeah.
and then you find out later after the game that they were really struggling with something and didn't make an excuse and didn't tell anybody that going into it, they were just going in there to compete. But I had a question with you, Jeff, about perspective. Sorry, Brett, I always sidetrack this. Is that okay?
That's okay. Go.
Did you, along the way, because you had such success at every level until you got to the pros, did you have a perspective along your journey where you sat back and kind of appreciated how good you were or how much success you had? Or were you always in that moment where you were at that point going, I'm not satisfied or I'm frustrated? Because did you ever look back and go, man, I'm so blessed to be in this position and I had success and I appreciated that success? Or were you so much in the moment that you didn't appreciate it till later?
I don't think I appreciate it, especially in high school. And I will say this, I've always said this in high school, man. We had some of the best athletes at our school. Like I know that I got a lot of the pub at different times, but man, our lineup was loaded. In football, we had 5 300-pound fatties up front. I mean, it was outstanding. I don't think it was so funny because I went from winning to losing like that. I lost my first 7 games in the minor leagues. I went to Danville, Virginia, and I had lost maybe 5 games in 2 years between baseball and football.
Mm-hmm.
And I got up there. We lost first night. I walked in. I remember everybody showering. Nobody cared. I'm like,
I was going to say, do people care in the
No.
minors? It's just
No.
about your development.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Second night, same thing. I came in and I was a little more pissed off, right?
Yeah.
Like, gosh, showered, get food and go. But I remember talking to one of our coaches and he said, what's going to separate you is don't ever settle for losing. Don't buy into some of these guys in here that it's just something to click in and click out and go home. He was like, always be disappointed. Realize this is baseball. You're going to lose a 30-year games no matter what, no matter if you're the best team in the league. But don't ever get complacent because if you get that attitude, man, it can bring you down. And so I always remember trying to keep perspective of like, look, there's games we're going to lose, but I got to make sure that I give everything I have and that there's some disappointment at the end of the game with losing.
But when you were in the pros and you were struggling in the pros and you're having disappointment, did you ever sit there and go, man, I'm the 1% of the 1%. I need to be appreciative of that. Or
absolutely.
Are you only comparing yourself against the guys that you're going, that are also the 1%.
I had people speak truth into me. I never wanted to try to look at it because I always wanted to compete and do as hard as I could. But between Katie, my mom and dad, friends, old coaches,
Just how hard it was to make it to where you, just how hard it was to get to that point.
You've always heard the saying, and for people that haven't, it's harder to stay in the big leagues than it is to get to the big leagues because of injuries, numbers. I mean, I remember when I was a first-round draft pick by the Braves, I had all these people tell me, you're going to get your shot in the big leagues.
Yeah.
Like, even if it takes 5 years, teams don't want a first-rounder not making it to the big leagues. Makes their scouting department look bad.
Yeah.
So it's what are you going to do with it when you get there? And so I don't think you can ever lose perspective of that. And look, I think my parents did a really good job of, when I needed it or when I became selfish or when I did, my parents were disappointed in me. And they let me know it. And I think that was important too, because they put a lot of time, they put a lot of money, a lot of effort. And it's like, if you're not going down that. So my question to you two would be, can you remember a time with your kids where you were truly disappointed in them?
You know, if I was truly disappointed in them, it would have been behavior.
Yep.
It would have been attitude. And yeah, there were times, you know, I had one of my sons really dealt with negativity and getting so down on himself. And that continued over a period of time. And
Can we
and
call
so-
him out? Which one was it?
He knows who he
He's
is.
been called out a couple times.
But I will say, you know, what I learned, especially with that son, is we talk about the way disappointment manifests itself. There were a lot of weekends, a lot of Sunday nights where he would say, "Dad, I'm done. I'm quitting." And at first that would rock me. And then I learned over time that the next day he would get up like so motivated to work harder. I mean, and he worked his tail off. And now he still struggled with on match day, giving himself a break and thinking positively, although he had a lot of great success too. I talk about him too much and the things that were, struggles, but he had some great tournaments and some great success. But teaching your kid, to me, we talk about the positive response to disappointment. It's allowing it to fuel you, after the initial, bad feelings, but, waking up the next day and then allowing it to fuel you to get better. I mean, that's what we want out of our kids.
It's a great question, Jeff. I think that, and Britt said it right. I think I've never been, for my two boys are the ones who play sports. My girls were always in theater, but I've never been disappointed in them because they always carried themselves really well. They always were great teammates. They always never lost their temper on the field, on the court. I think my oldest son, Daniel, who was a really good soccer player, I remember being disappointed for a while because he had such potential, but it just wasn't something that was really he was passionate about. He could have been so good, but he didn't invest a whole lot into it, so it wasn't as disappointed. My second son, Brady, had invested so much into his pursuit of his goals that when it looked like he was struggling or it looked like there was a dead end or whatever, I was disappointed for him. I wasn't disappointed in him. And then it was cool. His journey kind of ended in a cool way. And so, I think as a parent, we talk about perspective, like Britt and I have had those conversations where we thought that maybe those journeys were going to end up for our kids sooner than they did. And just kind of like taking a deep breath, letting God come in, letting them kind of, you can be there for them. You can speak into them. You can pray for them and pray with them. And then know that God's faithful. And I really do believe that God is faithful to these kids when they do things the right way and they put the effort in. It may not be that they're going to win a championship or they're going to get recruited, but you, as a parent, I think all you can hope for is that you're really proud of them when the journey's over with.
I think that's right on. And I got to pick up on something you said that I think is so important. And it's the distinction between being disappointed for them and being disappointed in them. And as you said with your kids, my kids, are great character young men, and I was never really disappointed in them. But, my other son had some major injuries, and it was like gut punch. The third or fourth injury, it was a gut punch to him, but it was a gut punch to me as well. And so wrestling with, I'm so disappointed that this is happening, but I don't, I've got to communicate to him because they see it. I mean, they see it on my face.
Oh, absolutely.
But I've got to communicate to them that, hey, I'm not disappointed in you at all. I'm disappointed for you. Yeah.
I got mad last week at my daughter's first softball tournament, and she knew it too because she was up third that inning, and whoever's up first got a base hit. And I looked in the dugout, and she was talking. She didn't even have her helmet on. She didn't have her bat on. And she should have been on deck now. And I was going to yell. I really was. And I'm like, I just want to watch this unfold.
Yeah.
And so the girl that was up, literally my daughter's supposed to be on deck. All of a sudden, like second pitch got hit. And all of a sudden, my daughter turned around and literally her walkout song was playing.
Yeah.
She threw her helmet on. She, of course, didn't put her batting gloves on, got her bat, and then swung at the first pitch way down, like not even a good pitch, and grounded out. And she got in the dugout, and I could see her make eye contact with me, and I just had this look at her like this. And I remember I didn't say anything, and after the game, we're walking there, I said, "This is your mulligan."
Yeah.
I'm like, and she was like, "I know, Dad. I know. I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah." And so, like, I felt like that was a great way to let her know I'm disappointed the fact that you were not even paying attention. But I also, it was like I gave her some grace, and she knew, and that, we played 3 more games, and I promise you, when she was in the hole, she was ready to go. And so it's like, she's 11 years old, like stuff like that's going to happen. But I wanted her to know that's not okay. And that's not performance based.
Yeah. Well, I the reality is, and we need to let parents know, there are going to be moments that you get frustrated with your kids. I got frustrated with my boys at times when I thought they didn't prepare well, and then we got to the big event and it showed up. And if they were on this podcast, because they remind me of this often, of a match where when they played doubles and they were the number 1 seeds in this big tournament, and we got up there in the first match, and I felt like they hadn't prepared well, and they bickered with each other and they lost, and I was packing my chair up in the middle of the last game. And they've reminded me of that many times.
Well, did they come back and win?
No, they lost.
Yeah, so tell them Dad knows. Yeah. Y'all were done, No, but I know it is funny, but I would encourage parents this. While your kid's in the moment, and even if you're disappointed in them for something like that, while the game's going on, while the match, still try to have good body language so they can continue to perform, because that's the biggest thing I always tell people. I used to look at my mom and dad all the time, and if I saw the eye roll, the head tilt back, it's like you just get deflated, man. I don't care how confident you are, how good you are. When you look at your mom and dad, you need to see positivity. Now, when you get in that car, if you want to let it rip on them, I'm all for it. I'm here for it.
It's funny.
But in that moment, while they're playing, let them see the positivity.
It's so hard. That's the hardest part of sports parenting, because you've heard me say this many times, Brad. You can be I could be with my boys. I could be perfect for 99.9% of a match in body language, and if 1 second I was like, they would latch onto it and see it. I never missed it.
Yeah, I think going back to perspective, I think I always was telling my kids, to really just enjoy being healthy, enjoy being able to. I said we would be driving to, some game or whatever. I was like, there's kids in hospitals right now who would be dying to be able to play baseball today, or to play basketball today, or soccer today, and just be thankful that you're healthy and you're fit, and that you can go out there and enjoy this beautiful day. And I tell the parents the same thing. I tell myself the same thing. It's like, man, I got a great kid. If my kid goes 0 for 4, or my kid, doesn't score a point in this basketball game, I'm just so thankful that I got a healthy, kid that wants to get out there and exercise, and just, you got to count your blessings in a situation like that, but I still was the guy that would, my bio language would be bad if there was struggles there too.
Perspective's everything, man, and trying to keep it in. So, let us know what you think. Send us your thoughts. I think we could do another segment down the road with this, with probably examples of certain athletes and where you've seen disappointment. The good come from it and the bad come. So please let us know what you think, and have a great week.